Right now, Senate Republicans are trying to push through the nomination of Trump's personal attorney, Todd Blanche, to be the permanent attorney general. But a pair of outgoing Republican senators, Thom Tillis and John Cornyn, are threatening to tank the Judiciary Committee's vote on that nomination. They want Todd Blanche to agree in writing that he will not move forward with Trump's bogus court settlement, creating a slush fund on the taxpayers' dime to reward Trump's allies, like the violent insurrectionists who raided the U.S. Capitol. They also want to narrow the part of that corrupt deal that granted Trump broad immunity for ongoing IRS audits. But Todd Blanche has so far refused to agree to those conditions in writing, probably because his boss does not want him to, and he's happy to say something verbally and then go back on his promise. And those two Republican senators, at least as of now, are standing their ground. Here was John Cornyn earlier today.
We've heard from them. It's just that they refuse to commit to writing what he testified to under oath. And it's not a big ask. We're trying to help them get this solved, but they refuse to accept our help.
All of this has put Trump's allies on Capitol Hill in an incredibly awkward position as they weigh whether or not to move forward with a vote to advance Blanche's nomination. I mean, just listen to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley dodging questions about it earlier this evening.
Mr. Chairman, will the hearing be delayed? Will the vote be delayed tomorrow?
We are working on getting a solution.
You think you'll make it?
We are working on getting a solution.
What did you guys discuss in that meeting?
Will you be meeting with Mr. Blanche again today?
We are working on getting a solution.
Any commitments on a vote tomorrow at this point?
We're working on getting a solution.
That's called message discipline, I guess you could call it that. They are working on getting a solution. I don't know if you heard that. Now, earlier tonight, we learned that the DOJ has sent a response to Cornyn and Tillis to try to end the standoff, but that obviously has not satisfied the two holdouts because Republicans have now officially postponed the vote on Blanche's nomination. All of this is happening because the president and his allies have refused to give up on Trump's most toxic priorities, even when their own voters are begging them to do just that. Joining me now is Senator Adam Schiff, Democrat from California and member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, we just got news before we came on air that the Judiciary, the Justice Department sent a new response to Senators Tillis and Cornyn. Then we got news that the vote has officially been postponed. Anything we don't know that you know? And what do you make of all of this?
I don't have anything beyond that. I think it's positive. I just hope that these two senators, and particularly Senator Cornyn, don't settle for too little. This settlement, this bogus settlement that came from the president essentially suing himself, waiting till he was president, then suing the IRS for $10 billion so that he could get the IRS and the DOJ to agree to some incredibly wonderful, generous terms that he, his family, their associates, their businesses, their subsidiaries, etc., would all be immune from audit examination for anything that went before the signing of that document. This is to a guy who is a known tax cheater. So hugely valuable, potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's just part of it. The other part is the slush fund for the cop beaters. And here's the deal. They're already paying off some of the president's supporters using the judgment fund. They've already paid off Michael Flynn. They really don't need a special slush fund to do it. And I would hope these senators recognize that and that they will insist on protections against using other department funds to pay off the president's cronies. And as for that tax settlement, that should be shredded. The court has already found this was a collusive agreement, and no amount of narrowing should be able to rescue that deal.
There's no question they could go farther. I mean, they've been focused, to your point, on the IRS settlement, just really modifying the audit portion of it, which certainly is also outrageous and saves the Trump family a great deal of money. Why do you think? I mean, we have seen Epstein survivors on the Hill. That is outrageous, too. Todd Blanche's handling of that. There are a lot of things that they could pick apart. Why this? What do you make of that?
You know, it's a good question. I think the cop beater fund was just offensive to them at a different level. And the more they looked at the tax thing, the more they recognized it was some really ugly self-dealing. But that should bother them. But so, too, should the fact that Blanche and the department are using that department to go after the president's enemies, to the preposterous degree of indicting James Comey over a bunch of seashells, to the dangerous degree of going after my Senate colleagues for putting out a video the president didn't like. That kind of abuse should alarm them as much as anything they've seen. And of course, we don't hear a peep from them about that.
It would be significant, obviously, if Todd Blanche didn't get through the Judiciary Committee. I don't want to, that would be significant. We don't know that will happen yet, but as of right now, it's postponed. He would still be the Deputy Attorney General. He could still be the acting Attorney General. Trump could decide not to nominate someone to, he could choose that, I suppose. Why is it so important to block this confirmation from him being formally confirmed as the Attorney General as opposed to acting? What should people understand about that?
I think people should understand that the president has been able to engage in so much over-the-top corruption because the Senate and the House are not acting as a check on his power the way the founders contemplated. The significance of essentially defeating this high-level nominee is that the Congress is, in a way, back to doing its institutional job in rejecting purely unqualified people or people who should be disqualified for abusing the positions they already have. So it's an important statement that Congress is not willing to roll over for this president on everything. Will it matter in terms of the conduct of the department? If Blanche is given carte blanche as the acting AG, it may functionally be very similar. But I think it sends an important message, sets an important precedent, maybe emboldens the Senate to go beyond this decision and in other respects reject the insupportable.
It should feel good to play a better role in history books in moments, we should say.